Mute is off, recording is on. It is 6 p.m. and everyone is here, Mayor.
Okay, then we are starting this work session is called to order. Roll call, ma'am.
All right. Roll call vote, or excuse me, roll call attendance. Councillor Maher.
I'm here.
Great. Councillor Eglin.
Here.
Councillor Erickson, are you here?
Here.
Councillor Brandau, are you here?
Here.
And Councillor Ward Mullen? And Mayor Watkins?
Here.
Councillor Skipper is excused, so everyone is here.
Okay, what we're starting with is some utility rate education. I think that Shannon, you've got that.
Yes, we put together 2 items in your packet for you. We are looking for you to review this and provide some additional feedback on whether there are things in here that you like, things that you would like to see, anything that you feel is omitted that you would like to see in there. We did have a couple of suggestions already that rather than just saying that rate increases, we put off rate increases for over 50 years, say when we started the rate increases, and also to break out the 2 grants that we have received that we will be utilizing. Also on the 1-page sheet of where does my utility payment go, in the original council packet, the city hall transfer was labeled as 7.6%. We realized that that reflected the $100,000 that was approved in the budget last year versus the $50,000 that had been historically done and is being proposed moving forward. And so we adjusted that, and so you'll see that percentage change to 3.8%.
Okay, folks, before we start, one thing I want to say, remind everybody is that for council, 1 question, 1 follow-up, and then we move on if there are any other questions waiting. If there are no questions waiting, 1 question, 1 follow-up. Thanks. And with that, are there any questions or comments? Observations? Is anybody read this before? Councilor Noel?
Well, Shannon, I was trying to find in here that last change you were referencing. I thought you gave us a new document and I can't find it. 3.8%, what is that? It is, handed that out to us in our agenda review meeting this year.
Yeah.
So it made it separate from your packet.
Yeah.
Oh, got it, okay.
Unless you want to share with the rest of it.
Well, so this one comment that Shannon had already highlighted was that instead of just saying rates have increased over 50 years, that we are specific because they have increased in the last few years. And I said we need to make that clear because otherwise folks are going to say, well, no, wait a minute, you have raised them. So,
Up until about 2012 or 2013, that's where we started. Yeah. Other than that,
oh, I had asked about this new wording grant. I want to specify the 2 grants, right?
Specify, we'll detail out the 2 grants.
Linda, am I the only one, or folks, am I the only one that's having trouble hearing?
No, you're not, Jamie. I can't. Whatever they just said, I have no idea. The
Oh.
volume is terrible tonight.
Yeah, I don't think I need earphones. I could put some in, but I don't know. Maybe Kathy, can you hear better?
We're a lot farther from the microphone, so you.
I've turned mine all the way up and it's still difficult to hear. I thought I caught it, but we might have to restate a couple things,
I think,
particularly
no
on the
idea.
questions.
Have no idea what Shirley said. I mean, I've got my computer volume turned all the way up and it's
I'll state it again. Can you hear me now?
not really.
Really? Well,
We've got problems with the computer or something,
should we move
I'm
forward?
gonna get closer to the microphone.
or maybe bring the mic closer to you.
Really not off camera, which will be fine, but that's why it's back is to get
You
the
and I
look.
could go off camera, it's probably more
Yeah,
hard for the mayor.
Yeah.
What I was saying is that in the document, that instead of saying rates haven't been increased over 50 years, that we need to specify when the rate, because I think it was 2016, if I'm correct, is that right?
in 2014 is when the rates started
Yeah,
increasing.
right, so to say over 50 years is not correct, so I thought we needed to specify that, otherwise folks out in the community will go, well, wait a minute, we've had rate
We
increases.
need to move forward.
So that was my comment.
Agreed. The volume's better as well. Thank you.
Moving closer, you're just gonna lose some of us off camera,
Who's it?
just due to the dynamics of the room.
Just the arrangement of the room, we're kind of, okay.
So Linda, can you do a test and see if you're close enough now?
Yeah. Is that better, guys?
Yes, thank you.
Hear me? Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So back to where we were. Yeah, okay, we are discussing the one utility rate increase and the educational piece packet that they put in, staff put in here. Do any of you have any questions or comments on that? And once again, reminder, one question, one follow-up. If there are no other questions, then you can keep on going, but we'll start with one question and one follow-up per person. Grant, get back here.
I'm gonna try some earbuds to see if that helps.
Okay.
And did, Linda or Christy, did we find out what average rate is for the communities around us? Like a base rate, like I pay $126 a month.
An average for community residential, taking the business out, is about 137, depending on consumption use. And that is our average. So I think too, that might help is these marketing pieces so that people understand their water bill. We're gonna have our public works and our other staff have them available to hand out when they get questions. So any questions you think we've missed would be really beneficial to add to the marketing component. Like maybe an average residential use, although, some people do a lot of watering so that it might not be in context for that. But we're looking for suggestions of what you think the citizens or community would like to have.
Yeah.
Well, I'm wondering if we have an average of what other cities around us base rate might be, so that it looks like ours might be in line, or if they're not in line. Does that, like Amity, Dundee, maybe Yamhill, and so on?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's a shifting. We did take a look at some proposed rates in the area. Like, for example, Yamhill is increasing their 17%. They're way behind on their infrastructure needs, so they're going to be playing catch up for the several years. They're going to bear the cost that we do. Our rate is, in comparison to our sister cities, pretty much, it'll probably come out close to top. McMinnville is always going to be lower. Yamhill is probably the closest to us, and I'm not sure what it's going to look like once they adopt those new water rates over the next couple of years. But we are at the top of the rates due to the fixing of the infrastructure since 2014 and all the debt service to make that happen.
We're at the top, but didn't you say that all of the cities around us just about are looking at?
Yes, they're all
now starting to face the same thing. They're gonna be soon.
Yeah, Amity, just so you know, Amity, during the ice crisis was an hour away from having no water to their residents. So they have to do some serious infrastructure changes. Willamina's increasing their rates by 5%, sewer 5%, water also. So we've got our sister cities, some of them playing catch up. Lafayette is going to come in a little bit higher because they just bought into McMinnville, and we'll see how that's going to even out for them at that point. And then Yamhill's just hitting the ground running, so it'll be comparative within, I'd say 2 to 3 years. We'll all be sitting about the same, except for Mac Water and Light. They have their, actually Mac Water and Light is going to be building a $50 million water plant. And when they do that, when they take on that debt, that will reflect eventually because they need to start housing more water.
Yeah, they were.
So maybe a comparison would be nice for folks to see so that they don't think we're that out of line, or if we are, then they can see that. So it might be helpful.
Counselor Eglin, are you looking at just the base rates? One of the things that we were encountering is some of the other utility bills in other cities have other fees associated on the bill itself, which made comparison a little more challenging. The other thing that made it a little challenging is some communities do it by gallons, so it's cubic feet, and some do it by 1 cubic foot versus 100 cubic feet. And so it wasn't truly an apples to apples comparison. And so I just want, are you looking solely for the base rate? And I would want to try to keep it to communities that do the same measurement that we do, which is 100.
Right. Just an apple to apple comparison would be great. I don't know if you can or not, like you were mentioning. So it just would be nice for folks to see that, I think.
Okay, I will take a look at our chart and see which communities are as close to apples as we can get for base rate.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Do you have anything?
Was the water bottle helpful, that graphic, so you could see where the money goes? We were trying to find something that the community could understand. Was that helpful for you guys to understand?
I see some nodding.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you've got a lot of facts and figures, a graphic's a nice representation to appeal to that type of learner. So I think that's good to have a graphic associated with that.
So I guess as you guys are talking over the next couple of weeks, if you could shoot us some additional ideas, if you think a community member has brought up a good question that we might address and add to that component. We just want to make sure that because these are going out in all the water bills, so that everybody understands why the rates are increasing. And then we also want them to understand that Shannon's working aggressively on several large grants. Linda and Shannon had a good meeting the other day with Representative Noble. And when we receive those grants, that will have huge impacts on our water rates. So I think that's going to be critical, and letting people know we're trying to get grants to bring it down and pay for the DEQ lagoon projects.
So there's a possibility that rates could go down if we get those grants?
If not, if we get enough grant money, not necessarily down, but no further increases. What we do is bring the rate analysis in. But we will have them do a rate analysis. If it came in that we could possibly drop. I would see it more leveling with the cost of living each year. But it's a big deal if we can get the funding for the lagoons, because that's driving that sewer rate increase.
We'll talk about this more towards the end of the meeting, but there are several programs with, especially with the feds and what's going on in Congress right now as far as some of the infrastructure bills that they're putting through. There's there's always a chance. We never say good chance or high chance or whatever, but there's always a chance that we'll be able to put in for some grants, get some funding, other sources, and to the extent we can, maybe get the same support that we got for the water system repairs. But we're working on worst case scenario, which is that we have to go out and get a $6 million loan to pay for a sewer system that we have to do or we'll get fined for. So we want folks to understand that we're not just sitting here taking it and assuming that that's what's going to happen, but we need to be prepared.
When would you see this being rolled out to the community? When would be the ideal date? What water bill would they go into?
They're gonna go in June to prepare them for July 1. So we need probably a fast turnaround, talking to the community and making sure we get everything in there and be thoughtful.
So counselors, if you could have your comments back by the end of next week, that would be helpful.
Councilor Erickson. Did you have a comment?
So I'd like to find out or know if we get grant money for whatever it is to work on our water system, sewer, water, whatever, is 100% of that money going towards that project?
Yes.
Okay, so is it so that through the water system, money has been taken from water to put into an account that would then work out to pay for part of a city hall if we ever build one someday? Is that right? And if so, how much money per year in the last few years has been put aside?
Christy, could you address that, having that experience in that history?
So Grant, back in 2012, City Manager Chad Olson started a program to establish a financing program to show that the city had designated revenues to pay for a city hall. In governmental accounting, a city hall is not financed by general fund. A city hall represents the city as a whole, and that is split in all our distribution as a third, a third, a third. So during that time, we've been putting 50,000 away towards City Hall.
50,000 a year?
50,000 from water, 50,000 from sewer, and 50,000 from general fund.
Okay, so if we put 50,000 from water, 50,000 from sewer, so we've put $100,000 towards from the water over to support or to pay towards a city hall. Is that right? Per year?
So yes, it is.
Okay, so with $100,000,
Grant,
I mean, I understand we have somebody at City Hall that collects the payments from the citizens, when they pay their water bills on that. But it seems like $100,000 per year is an extreme amount that what it actually would cost the city to have that person there. If we had one person sitting there all day long collecting water bill money and then a few office supplies and different things, it would be less than $100,000. I don't understand why we need to set aside $100,000 a year to put towards a city hall when that money would be better spent to fix these water lines and pipes and sewers and the issues we have with water in this town.
Grant, are you ready for me to answer?
I'm listening.
Okay, so City Hall is 1/3 water, 1/3 sewer, 1/3 general fund. We do all the processing, like, there's a huge list, it's called internal expenses. And they used to do a transfer to City Hall for those shared expenses. All accounts payable are split as a governmental practice through the GFOA through that split. It's an accepted practice across, like, for example, my wages themselves and the city managers are also split. The city is not just a city hall is not general fund. The city hall is the city of Carlton. That $100,000 is not given away. It's not sitting and not doing anything. It was an established revenue source so that if we do City Hall, we can show our lenders and get a low rate that we have an established revenue stream. Otherwise, what they would do is they would secure a loan with water revenue, with sewer revenue, and they would pick part of our tax revenue. So we alleviate them hitting other designated revenues by establishing that stream. It's a very good fiscal procedure, which is why they were offering us a rate to loan at 2.24% without attaching to any designated revenues. That revenue does not go away. It was transferred into the capital improvement fund, and I'm going to simplify it a little bit, like saving for a vehicle. You want to buy a vehicle, you start putting money away. A city hall is considered, or any project of this magnitude has soft costs, the engineering, the architect, the surveys. So those are what have been spent so far on City Hall. If City Hall proceeds, we have an established revenue stream, showing fiscal responsibility. If it doesn't, it will go to the repair of what we can do, and whatever is left over then distributes again equally back to each of the three funds. It isn't like the money is spent. It comes out to about $3 of the water bill, if that helps you in perspective for that transfer. But like on the next analysis, you guys decide not to do City Hall, that then it's going to go into the repairs. We still have to leave it in the capital improvement fund to do the repairs on the City Hall, which is a combination of actually 9 funds, but the 3 strong revenues are what supports it.
If I could add on to that, my experience is, as she mentioned, is that all expenses are usually split 3 ways. The cost of the printing the bills, the cost of the postage, it's all split 3 ways. And I do want to speak to my experience with a water project in which we did have to go back to Business Oregon, and they did leverage, and they had us commit $100,000 from our urban renewal district before they would increase the funding. And we had to do that, even though the amortization came in much less when it was finally all said and done. But we still have that commitment, and they hold us to that contract, or held us to that contract. Is that helpful to answer your question, Councilor Erickson?
No, not really. It just seems like $100,000 a year to be set aside from the water to take care of the city, a new city hall, that type of stuff. It just seems that it's over and above that. Somehow, I think it needs to be looked into and figure out how to reduce that amount. That's my take on it. I think that's just an awful lot of money being taken away from water and sewer that could be spent on fixing our problem we have with the water and sewer, and not just having it waiting around for a city hall.
Okay, Councilor Brandau.
So, I mean, that's just where I'm at with it tonight.
Councilor Brandau.
I was just gonna comment, we are having the budget meeting next week.
Yes.
I think that'll be appropriate meeting to discuss that. Because we'll be discussing all the budget issues, and I think that'll be just save it for that meeting.
Okay. Okay, moving on.
The next item on the work session agenda is the grant application updates. Amy, would you be willing to share your memorandum and explain the timeframe in which this will affect this?
Sure. Mayor and Councilor, this is a update of a list. I guess it's a general list because there is some on here that we didn't get that I didn't put on there. But from about January 2020, so you have a good idea of how active we have been in trying to pursue grants. I will admit I'm a little new to it, so a lot of them it's a learning curve. But despite that, we've had some success, and you know, some of it you can see with the playgrounds getting installed and whatnot. We just heard back from Travel Oregon yesterday. We did not get the Travel Oregon COVID management grant, so that was sad. I was excited for that one. But this list here kind of gives you a gamut of different items in different areas of the city. So it's not just one thing we're focusing on. We're kind of focusing and trying to cover different parts, whether it's streets, parks, sewer, water, and just try to cover as many different parts of the fund that we can to support all citizens. So this is a kind of good overview and perspective of what we've been doing.
Are there any questions about the grants that we've applied for or that we're working on? Councilor Maher.
I would just like to say thank you for including this. It's really important to know that we are actively pursuing so many of these opportunities out there. A lot of these grants are annual as well. So this is an opportunity to get one started and continue year over year with them. It's great that we have the dates on here as well. So that gives us an idea sort of when they're due, and for budget purposes, when we could, you know, hope to have some good news out of them. So I really like this edition, and I think the more that we apply for, let's just keep a running list and follow up with those as they come in.
Councilor Eglin.
Gosh, it looks like you've been really busy. Thank you. And I'm really excited about the ODOT Safe Route to Schools and Oregon Community Pathway Grant. I think that's going to be really beneficial for us to keep our citizens safe and hopefully get a walking community. So thank you.
And I would say to everyone on the council or elsewhere, if you happen to hear of one or run into something that you think might be worth us looking into, that definitely get that message over to Shannon and make sure that she's got some contact information for it. There's a lot of grant money floating around out there, and if we don't know about it, we can't apply for it. Some of them might not be appropriate, some of them might be, and anytime we can do that, we're better off.
For sure.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I'm thinking that what I might do, we're done, is that?
Yep, that's it for the work session.
Okay, does anybody have anything that they want to, about a half an hour?
I might want to touch base on the pool situation.
Oh, yeah, good
That
idea.
would be great, yeah, thank you.
So you want me to touch base?
Yes,
Okay. So I wanted to let you know about the pool. As you know, we approved opening the pool if it was low risk. We're currently in high. We don't know what that's going to entail. We have got applications for guards. So what Amy, who helps run the pool administratively, let the guards know today that the city is not gonna put them on the payroll at this time, but we're bringing in someone to certify them at the pool, in May actively, and the city's gonna pay for their certifications in hopes that the pool's gonna open. And then, hopefully we can move out of the high and move back down to low. And we're gonna be working on a very modified pool schedule, even on low, because we have even had difficulties getting guards that could commit to full-time work. And so we're gonna be probably running it on daily admission only. We're keeping an eye on the rest of the pools, and we're getting the CIS insurance, our insurance carrier, to give us some guidelines. So that's the newest update. We still don't know if we're gonna open. The public works crew has got the boiler. The boiler started because it takes a long time to heat. We're gonna do a small cleaning in the areas where the recertifications are going to go. And then we're just gonna keep you in the loop as much as we know. It's a really difficult thing for us to have the ominous feeling of not being able to open the pool. So we are having high hopes that everybody's gonna behave and we can get back into low risk. So I just wanted to give you an update on that particular situation.
Thank you.
So low risk or moderate risk?
Low is 50% capacity for a pool. Moderate is 25% capacity. And then we were all talking in the office today, could we even pull off 25%? We don't know. That's a really low attendance. That's 30 kids in the pool. And so we'll bring it back to council as soon as we're gonna have to choose by the time we hit to June on what we're gonna do.
Tell your friends, get their vaccinations, keep the masks on, do what you can. That's about it we can do there. Okay, anything else anybody wants to add? Question?
Well, as far as like the ecology agreement, do I have to wait to that section of the council meeting, can I just talk about it now?
If it's just a discussion
It's
item.
just bring it up.
Oh, yeah, if it's a future agenda.
Yeah. So today, I don't know if any of you on the council also received this email, but I received an email from Paige Hammock. And she's writing to say that she supports her vote for yard food waste service in Carlton and also glass service. So what I would like to do is put it on a work session agenda to talk about, to go back to the ecology agreement, and apparently it's going to be coming up for renewal and
Should be July.
I believe so. I do know that Dave, who runs that, he's back east right now in some type of an emergency situation, so he's been a little MIA. So I'm hoping whatever happens, we should know something pretty soon.
I thought last year when we went through the whole agreement process, I thought we agreed to doing yard waste. But I'm just,
We, as I recall, we agreed that we wanted yard waste. We were trying to get the franchise agreement updated.
Right.
So that came first. We had to get that done, which we finally got done. And then my understanding was that when we come in to renegotiate the franchise agreement this year for 2022, that's when we would be discussing that and discussing putting the yard waste and glass on it.
I think I recollect that too. We got the ordinance updated and then he said he was gonna come back. I think Kathy was talking to him and he said it would be when we came back. Yeah.
so in our agreement, we do have the capability for glass service and yard waste, but what, somebody say that we don't have it in there for food waste?
I don't recall
I don't
discussing
recall
food
food
waste. There
waste.
was no food waste discussion. It was yard waste. I don't know how you put And I don't remember hearing him mention food waste either.
Yeah.
So the agreement is coming up this summer at some point, you know, the,
I don't know
When's
that,
the cycle on that? Is it, I think it's like July, August,
something like that.
fiscal year?
We'll put it on our list to check, Shirley.
and then we could just put it, kind of, the work session close to that. Okay.
The one caveat that I keep reminding people on that, and my understanding from what he said, what is
Dave Martin.
Dave, yeah, what Dave said, was that we don't have a choice as far as opting out or opting, it's one or the other. You either opt in or you opt out. If you opt in, you have to take food, or you have to take yard waste and glass. If you opt out, and my understanding was that individuals could not even opt out of the program. It was, if one does it, we all do it, period, paragraph. There was no, I could say, well, I'd rather not do it. I don't have a choice. So that's something that we need to get clarified and find out exactly. But that was my understanding when we were talking to him. Okay, so any other comments from anybody?
So maybe now's the time if anybody has some other discussion, so we don't have to do it at the end of our council session, since we're 25 minutes here.
Yeah. Is there anything else anybody would like to discuss or have added to future agendas?
I would like to add for a future agenda some information on our sidewalks. I'd like to find out, probably from Brian's team, you know, what they think it would take to maybe finish a really strong thoroughway somewhere, get some pricing, some budget information of what we could accomplish within the next 2 years, say, and just take a really good look at that. And instead of that anonymous 5-year plan, let's really try to nail down some actual dates, locations, pricing, and footage of how much we can get done.
Did you want to talk about the meeting we had? Oh, you go ahead. Okay. Yeah, one of the I was going to run through later on, but we can run through it now too. Some of the meetings and some of the projects, conferences that we've been, actually Shannon, Christie, and I, it seems like, have been doing in the last month. One of those was a visit with the folks from ODOT, who Jenna, I remember Jenna, I can't remember the program that she's with.
I don't know. She's an ODOT liaison, and she coordinates projects with safe walking for communities and for pedestrian crossings for kids, and basically it's mostly sidewalk. So she liaisons with projects across the state.
With a focus on walkability and safe walkability. We ended up spending about a half an hour with her talking about the grants that are available and the stuff that's going to be coming up. A lot of the stuff that they have available is, I think, going to be starting in 22, 23. So we're keeping in very, very close contact with her with regards to things like lighted crosswalks, well-marked crosswalks. I don't know that they can do specifically just sidewalk.
I think they did have some
Oh,
sidewalk
they
programs.
did have some sidewalk
And
programs.
that new one, the community pathways that are off the road, that they have some new funding for in community pathways.
So would they be able to help us with things that are not associated with 47, that are completely internal to Carlton? That would be great.
Yeah. That's the great thing about these programs, is that they're not, the focus is not necessarily on Highway 47 or on state highways. It's on creating walkable, livable, safe pathways around the communities. So, yeah, we spent quite a bit of time with them, and I think we'll probably be seeing more of them in the future.
And if I might add.
Yeah.
We left there with a plan, and that plan is, it's not specifically outlined in your grant update, but it is mentioned in there, is that the plan was first to move forward on a transportation system plan to see what types of projects come out of that update. And therefore, from that, those projects be able to move forward on some of the other grants. That last one that was referenced with Safe Routes to Schools and the community pathways in FY23, hopefully following the transportation system plan. So we left there with a strategic plan of action about how to approach these grant opportunities, what made more holistic sense for the community. And then on top of that, the mayor and I met with Abisha from SEDCOR, and they have an opportunity to help the city of Carlton with some economic development, some grant opportunities, and possibly some workforce solution opportunities to help in a community partnership with some of our sidewalks as well. So we still need more details from that meeting about how and when they can help us. So those will be forthcoming, but we have opened that conversation.
SEDCOR is an economic development organization. I think we're still learning a little bit about them. Through the Willamette Valley, at least, and they have worked with Newburgh and the city of Independence. They've gone in there and helped them through their workforce development program to build basically if you've been over to Independence in the last 5 years, all the new construction down there, they've got a new amphitheater, they have a new hotel right along the riverfront. All of the cement work that's, I think, through that, and a number of sidewalks back through the residential sections were put in with the help of SEDCOR, working with construction and city folks, getting them together and finding youngsters that were out of school or not, that had finished school, that weren't going to college, that maybe were just kind of trying to find a niche in the world. And so it's a workforce training program that they're doing. And they do a lot of other things too, but for our purposes right now, that was one that we were really interested in. They are, Abisha is the representative in the Yamhill County area. She works with the county, she works with all, like I said, the cities around the county to help when you're looking for economic answers to something. She's a pretty good resource for that. So we're trying to develop that relationship and get some stuff moving with her.
Yeah, those both sound like great steps. Thank you for that.
Okay. The other, last month was a month of meetings, and I was going to do this at the end, as I said, but we'll just run through them here. One of the other meetings we had, once again, I feel like the Three Musketeers. Shannon and Christy and I, and ODOT, Christine and John and Jim West, John Eustace and Jim West came up for this one. We had 2 meetings that day, one with Ken Wright and Bill Cross. the other one with Tony Rinders at Kendall Winery, both of whom have some obviously serious concerns about their, how the realignment would affect their access and their winery businesses. So the bulk of the time, I think, was probably spent with Ken and Bill. We came out of that one reassuring them that we wouldn't let anything, well, in fact, we will be later on in this meeting putting, talking about Ken and Bill both going on to the ad hoc committee for the realignment, and that's why they have some concerns about that. So they had wanted to be on that committee, and it seems reasonable to put them back on there. Tony had a lot of the same concerns with what's going on, with what would be going on there, and what he was worried about as far as how it would affect access to his buildings and facility. And I think basically we kind of sat back and listened to ODOT and let them listen to these guys. What we wanted to make sure was that everybody understood that the city and ODOT and the citizens are working as a team. There's no question. We are going through, as far as we're concerned, with the realignment. ODOT's got a few administrative issues that they need to get taken care of in order to get their realignment permission, to get their permission to do that. Once that is done, but I think by this fall, it's possible that we may be starting to discuss actual design work. And when that actual design work starts kicking in is when we'll kick up the ad hoc committee and get going on that. So that's where we are with those guys. Are there any questions? Did I leave anything out? I'm kind of ad-libbing here, so I'm not sure.
So the process right now, and I'll let others who were at the meeting step in if I misspeak, is that it's still very much conceptual at this point in time, and it was when we met with Tony and Ken Wright. So the project has changed its scope. It's gotten much more expensive and it's gotten larger. And so ODOT needs to go to their governing board and get permission to expand the scope. And once they do that, they will then come to the city and ask to formalize an agreement to move forward on the project. And once we have that agreement, which will be coming to council, then they will then start the design process. And so that's why the mayor referenced it would probably be the end of summer, maybe fall, as far as timing of all these governing boards and getting these agreements together. Christy, do you want to add anything that
from the financial component, I do have good news. When the project first came into play, and it was just going to go down Main Street, the project estimate cost was about $2 million, a little bit above. The city's match at that time for the $2 million project was $114,000. The new project cost, as they're gonna still do Main Street and do the realignment, is roughly between $7 and $8 million. But the great news for the city is our match stays the same at $114,000. So financially, that makes the city very happy, keeps our budget strong. These grants and these funding opportunities really gives Carlton that financial lift we need.
The other thing I would mention is that we had a chance to talk to the ODOT team after the other meetings, and we'll see what happens, but we were pretty adamant and made a pretty strong case for needing four-way stops as soon as possible on Pine Street and Main Street and down at Yamhill Street and Main Street. they've got some hoops that they're gonna have to jump through. Hopefully, we got through to them that those intersections are getting pretty non-negotiable as they are, and we really, really need four-way stop signs and controlled stops at those areas. Yeah, everybody's nodding their head, yeah. So hopefully we'll be able to get something through on that. We'll see what happens. But the main thing, a lot of the reason for doing this was as much as anything was to ensure that all of the parties that are involved in this realize and recognize that we're all going to be working together on it. It's the city, it's the citizens, and it's ODOT, and we're going to be listening to each other and working on this as a team, not pulling and pushing against each other, which has been a problem. So that's where we are with that. Other than that, let's see. As you mentioned, we did have a meeting also with Representative Noble last week. We were talking to him about some of the things that Carlton needs, some of the things that we're hoping. The legislature does have some discretion, not discretionary funds, but some funds that have come into them through the COVID, one of the COVID pieces of congressional legislation. And so they've got, each of the legislators has a certain amount of money that they can use to distribute on projects in their district. There is also another little pot of money that the legislature, Ways and Means Committee has an opportunity to look at distributing. So we're trying to get some grants ready and get some proposals ready for them to get in and take that. May the 10th is our deadline on those. So we'll be, Shannon mostly will be working on getting those proposals ready and get that stuff out to Representative Noble and see if there's any help for us there. Specifically with the sewer project is the main thing that we're focusing on, having to redo the sewer lines.
Hey, Linda,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. I was wondering if Shannon wanted to talk about the conversation she had with our superintendent.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Counselor. Yes, I did meet with the interim superintendent for Yamhill Carlton, and we had a great conversation, and we had some great ideas come from that about expanding a regular meeting so that we can figure out how to help and coordinate projects for the benefit of our communities, our respective communities. So we're looking at setting up monthly meetings for now in the future. We also talked about having a joint session between the school board as well as the city council to talk about shared issues for both constituencies. We also talked about ways to get the youth more involved in city projects. So being able to involve them, whether it's a small project or even looking at creating a youth council that could be involved in a specific issue that may be impactful to the youth in our communities, that then they could bring a proposed solution to council after they've had time to research it and engage and learn about government processes and be more engaged in our community. But it was a great discussion. We also had some discussions about emergency preparedness, and those are continuing. I've had a discussion with the mayor of Yamhill. The mayor and I have a meeting this Thursday with the fire chief. And so we're hoping to get some coordinated effort and get everybody together and start talking about some coordinated plans for emergency preparedness. And if I may just do another segment, is I had an interest come in from a counselor about learning about fire preparedness for this summer and what the fire department is doing. And so with this meeting on Thursday, I'll talk to the fire chief about coming perhaps to the
the June or July work session to talk to the council about what the fire department is doing to prepare for this summer season. Councilor Eklund, was there anything that I left out that you wanted me to address?
No, was good. Thank you, Shannon.
Okay, and that's going to be just about, give us 5 minutes here to relax. One thing I want to mention is that the playground, I want you folks to know that the playground in the lower park starts getting active at about 8 a.m. every morning and goes until dusk. The kids are busy and they're enjoying it, they're happy. It's been a great, and all of the feedback, I think, I don't know if the office has gotten any, but I certainly, all the feedback that I've heard has been real positive about it, and everybody's very happy with what's there. And so many thanks to our public works guys too for all the work they've done on that. So with that, I think we're going to, does anybody else have anything? Okay, with that, I think we'll go ahead and close the work session, take a 5-minute break, and come back to the regular meeting. Oh. Are we up and rolling? Yeah.
We are recording, we are unmuted and good to go.
Okay, folks. We're looking for our counselors. So is everybody back? Council back? There he is, and Councilor Maher.
There she is. She's not, it's not a video.
Oh, okay. Okay, so it is 7 o'clock and we will start the May meeting of the Carlton City Council. Oh, and Amy, could you call the roll, please?
We sure can. Councilor Maher, are you in attendance? Thank you. Councilor Eglund, are you here?
I am. Thank you.
Councilor Erickson?
Yes.
Great. Councilor Brandau, are you here?
Yes.
And Councilor Ward Mullen?
Yes.
And Mayor Watkins?
Yes.
All right, Councilor Skipper is excused, so we are in attendance and good to go.
So please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty. Okay, are there any changes or additions to the agenda?
No, there are not, other than the one that was made for the Panther Creek IGA yesterday.
Okay, ceremonies, appointments, and announcements. Just want to draw folks' attention to the thank you letter from Homeward Bound Pets in your packets, in the council packet. That was a letter of appreciation for the grant that we gave to Homeward Bound Pets last month. Item B is the invitation to be on the ad hoc committee to Ken Wright and Bill Cross, as I mentioned that earlier. We're still waiting for their applications, right?
That's correct. At the meeting, we invited them to participate in the ad hoc committee. We will be giving them applications to formally apply to be on that committee.
Should we probably don't do the appointment until
Correct.
Yes, okay. So just wanted, that was more of a point of information for you guys. Okay, citizen comments. I'm going to go ahead and read this out. So this section of the agenda allows members of the public to address the city council for items both on and not on the agenda. Please speak to the mayor at the correct time. When invited by the mayor, members of the public can come forward, state your name and street address. You can comment, like I said, on items not on the agenda or items that are on the agenda. And you have basically 3 minutes with which to speak. Are there any comments, questions?
We have Robin Geck, who has a comment.
Go, Robin.
My name is Robin Geck. I live at 539 North Cooch Street. And I just wanted to broach this subject at this meeting. I've written to each of you feeling a concern about how we get the community informed about what's going on with city council and decisions that the city is making. And I've spoken to the mayor about this too, and some other citizens, and there's some concern about the website and how user-friendly it is. As far as maybe getting in, I want to know what your ideas may be. I didn't hear back from anybody, and I guess maybe there are reasons why I didn't hear back from anybody when I wrote that I'm not aware of, but I know, and one I thought was, I put forth several different ideas. Maybe none of them were great, but just to get the ball rolling, I just would love to know where you all stand on that. I'm sure you're concerned too, as we go into the changes that are coming with our city for people to be informed. It's going to make it a lot easier for the city council to do what it needs to do without a lot of push if people know what's going on and aren't surprised.
Well, Mayor, Council, would you like that as a future work session and agenda item?
To talk about the website per se.
Website or city community engagements?
Yes.
Comparable.
Mhm. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Are there any other comments, questions?
Looks like Mrs. Terrell has her hand raised.
Susan, you're off. You're muted.
I'm Susan Turrell. I live at 416 Link in Link Street. I'd like to personally thank all who wrote grants for sidewalk infrastructure. Kudos to you. I really appreciate it. I also really appreciate the play structures. Seeing kids out and about in town brings me back to when I first moved here. It's really good to see. I would like to remind you that, and I've written to Shannon and emailed back and forth with her about this already, that 7th Street in the new subdivision is a collector street with a 5-foot bike lane requirement. Currently, there's no plan for striping that as a bike lane. And I have big concerns with that. It's a wide street. People are gonna drive fast. It's very excessively wide. It's straight. It's the only outlet to that neighborhood, which will involve phase 1 and phase 2. So I have big concerns about that. And I think at a minimum, it should be designated as a bike way to encourage those new residents to not get in their cars and drive to town, but rather to get on their bikes and their strollers and walk to town rather than congesting downtown traffic. I also have real concerns about no shade trees planted along the sidewalks. The model home has no shade tree to protect that, to make it a pleasant sidewalk. And then 2 new homes that are sold that are at the very south end of that property. Those also don't include a shade tree to protect that sidewalk, which is a huge concern for me. Part of making pedestrian infrastructure useful is to make it inviting. And finally, I'm really concerned that the city is not going to enforce conformance to the grading plans behind the Link Street properties and further endanger us for flooding. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Are there any other comments?
It doesn't look like there is any at this time.
Okay, moving right along. Consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Down to ordinances, resolutions, discussions, and action items. First item is the transmission line improvement project and the recommendation of the contract award.
Yes, Mayor and Council, in your packet is the recommendation of contract award to trench line construction. Their bid was about 6.1 million. We have a grant for 7.1 million. And our city engineer, Gordon, would you like to get into more detail about the bidding process and any other information you would like council to consider that may not be in your letter of recommendation?
Hi, folks. So I'm on my phone, not on the mute sign that's on the Zoom, because if I get on Zoom, I don't have a good connection. So there is a letter recommendation to award the contract. We had the bid opening April 8th, 2 o'clock. We had 4 bids, 2 were late. So per Oregon law, we could not open those bids. So we had 2 bids that we could open. And the low bid was trench line at $6,150,732.10. And the grant that the city received is sufficient to cover that, plus the design and construction services, plus approximately 5% for change orders, which is a industry standard for projects such as this. We can expect to have somewhere around 5% change orders. This is a good bid. We checked the Oregon Contractors Board website for debarment and check references. And we reviewed the bid for errors, and we actually called up the low bid, which we always do, to make sure that they had a good bid and they didn't omit anything. And they are perfectly fine and actually chomping at the bit. They have already been contacting us and sending in submittals for material. So one of the other things that I think is really important for the city on this one is that there was a lot of uncertainty on this bid because of the winter storm that went all the way down to Texas and shut down refineries. And that really affected the price of pipe and the availability of pipe. And that's why we put in an addendum for PVC pipe, because HDPE was being affected even more. And that addendum actually saved the city about $500,000. So this is a very good bid and one that I would recommend that the city approve. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Are there any questions for Gordon?
No question.
Councilor Maher?
Hi, Gordon. Talk to us a little bit about, if you would, about the oversight of this project in terms of, you know, from day one groundbreaking, checkpoints along the way for compliance, that type of thing.
Right. So part of the engineering services is actually what they call construction management. And there's quite a few things that are involved with that. Initially, that starts with what's called a pre-construction conference, where you sit down with the contractor and with perhaps their subcontractors and certainly city staff, and talk about the project, the requirements, lay out the schedule, and begin to answer questions. That's when we also set up standard construction meetings that happen every 2 weeks. The city, the engineer, and the contractor attend those construction meetings. We also have a process that's called submittal review. So every piece of equipment or material that they want to use on the project, they have to send in documentation of what that is, and it's reviewed against the specifications and the requirements of the project. So they can't use any material until it's been approved. There's also a process that's called RFIs, which is when the contractor has questions, there's an official process for asking and responding to those questions that includes the engineer and the city, and at times other permitting agencies. For instance, in this case, Yamhill County will be involved to a certain degree on the project because much of the work is on county roads. And there's also a process for review of pay requests or review of change orders. There's also very specific testing requirements that they have to meet for everything that they are constructing. That includes the construction backfill and the density and compaction. That includes the pavement and the density of the pavement. That includes the pipelines. There's pressure tests. There's also chlorination, disinfection, and bacteriological tests. So there's a whole series of checks that go on throughout the project. And at the end of the project, there's also a walkthrough of the entire project to outline what hasn't been done yet, what needs to be completed. These are all standard processes that occur on any construction project. Smaller projects, maybe not as much inspection, but on a large project like this, we'll have inspectors out there daily watching the contractor. And I would assume that daily the city staff will be dropping in on the construction as well, because they will be very concerned about how this goes. Hopefully that answered your question.
It does. Thank you.
Are there any, yes, Councilor Wardwell.
The council, right?
Yes, I forget you're right here.
So Gordon, just a couple questions. normally, I don't know if this process is different, but normally in our packets, we receive a copy of the bid, not only the winning bid, but all the bids, which I don't see that. Secondly, trench line excavation, are they an Oregon company or are they from somewhere else? No, all I know is that name, period.
Usually what I've seen is that the package includes a bid tab. I don't know if there's usually the full bid that's in it. Trenchline actually has worked for Carlton previously on another waterline project, and they did a very good job. And Brian actually was very pleased that Trenchline received the project. But the city does have the bids, and so if any counselor wants to see them specifically, they should be able to go to City Hall and see them. But yes, they're an Oregon company.
Okay, thank you. Just didn't know that from reviewing the materials. So, and I'm glad to know that they've done work for the city of Carlton and that Brian is pleased with them. So that adds a lot. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Erickson.
Oh, can you, what's the difference between the HDPE and the PVC?
That's a pipe material. So PVC, you've probably seen a lot of. So if you're driving by construction projects and you look over and you see a plastic pipe that's either blue or green, that's a PVC pipe, polyvinyl chloride. It's a very common pipe used for water lines.
Okay, so I've done myself, I mean, I've done, you know, in a small sense, PVC we use in sprinkler systems, the blue primer and then the glue to put it together, okay? So the HDPE, is it a better pipe to use or are they somewhat equal?
They're different. So this PVC is not the glued together. What you're talking about is what's called Schedule 40 or Schedule 80. This is what's called C900. It's a gasketed pipe. And as I said, it's very common for water systems. The HDPE is high density polyethylene. And it is not used as often for water lines in cities, but oftentimes for transmission lines. And the reason for that is it's affected by temperature, so it'll shrink and expand. And that's hard when you have like service lines, a lot of service lines, because they're static and they come off the side. And if you have a pipe that's moving, it can fatigue the service lines. The benefit of the HDPE is that it's got what they call a fusion butt weld. So instead of a gasket, they butt weld the ends of the pipe together. So there's no joints. It's a little bit more flexible as well.
So
they're not better or worse, they're just different. The
so if we
PVC
use,
pipe is, go ahead.
So if we use the PVC, what's the time span and guarantee on the joints?
PVC pipe, I believe, has a guarantee somewhere in the range of 50 to 80 years, but there's pipe that's probably been in longer. Well, not much longer because they just started putting it in the 60s and 70s. But
So
it's a long-lasting pipe.
Long lasting. Okay, so we go ahead and use this company that wants to put in the deal. They want to use PVC pipe.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have in this contract that if it fails within a few years, what's their recall to fix the problem if one of the joints fails? What's our time span?
So all the joints are tested prior. They're pressure tested to 150 PSI, and the operating pressure is much lower than that. It's probably anywhere from about 10 PSI to 100 PSI. So number one, it's tested much higher than what it'll be used for. Standard guarantees for construction projects, regardless of what the material is a 1-year guarantee. So that's what the contractor provides a guarantee for. So if a joint blows up within 1 year, they're still within warranty and are required to fix that.
So we have nothing, I mean, that's just the standards. That's just the,
That's standard. Yes, that's standard.
okay. What
No.
was that now?
Right?
Does anybody else have any more questions?
Say again?
I said one question and one follow-up, and then we check for other questions. So we're checking for other questions. You had your question follow-up. If there are no other questions, anybody else? Okay, you can go. Do you have another question?
Well, I guess I didn't have my answer completed, but if you're going to shut me down, that's okay. I'll live with that tonight, Linda.
I wasn't shutting you down. Never mind.
I get it. You're shutting me down. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Gordon.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve this contract bid? Is there a motion?
I'll move that the council accept a little bit of $6,150,736.10 provided by Churchline Excavation for the replacement of the transmission pipe from the water treatment plant to the concrete reservoir, and authorize the execution of all necessary documents associated with this project.
Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
second it. Jamie got it first.
Pardon?
I think Jamie got it first.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. The bid contract is awarded to Trenchline. Okay, moving on. This is an intergovernmental agreement between Yamhill County and the City of Carlton regarding paving of Panther Creek Road during the sewer line project.
Yes, this is related to the transmission pipeline we were just discussing. It discusses the allocation of costs between the county and the city of Carlton to expand it from just the one lane that the city of Carlton was considering doing to paving the entire road, as well as striping. City Attorney Wolf, do you have anything you want to carry this agreement?
Sure. This contract is basically the county piggybacking on the city's pipeline project to obtain a full overlay of the portions of the road that are going to be partially overlaid by the city in connection with the pipeline. So the bid documents allocated and asked that bids be separated as to the paving, and the paving portion of the bids were divided for the approximately 15,500 feet of pavement area. that the county is going to pay for half the road, the city's project is paying for the other half. The approximate reimbursement by the county, which I'm sure will be based ultimately on an exact figure, depending on the exact number of feet, will be approximately $196,000 that will be received from the county, which will offset the city's expenses in connection with this bid that you've just accepted. The IGA was reviewed by, it was drafted by our office. It was reviewed by county council. It was presented to the county commissioners Thursday at their regular meeting. They approved it, so it's ready for consideration now that you have accepted the bid that established that price. So other than that, it's a pretty standard and intergovernmental agreement between the two entities that you've seen on various occasions before. I would entertain any questions that the council has regarding the agreement.
Council have any questions? Okay, if there are no questions, is there a motion?
A motion to accept the agreement as outlined by City Attorney Walt. Thank you.
Could everybody hear that?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, abstentions? Okay, then we will be signing the, and approving the intergovernmental agreement for Panther Creek paving. All righty. Next is traffic calming report.
Mayor and council, given some of the increase in concern with pedestrians, we've been exploring processes and possibilities of various traffic control options. And again, our city engineer is here to speak to the memorandum that is in your packet and answer any questions you might have about items that are in that memo. Let's see.
Is that my cue?
That is your cue, Gordon, yes.
Okay, good. So I was asked to just put together a technical memo that outlines traffic control. We're not looking at any specific location or any particular recommendation, just essentially what are the steps and what can we do and what are the processes. So I did not look at traffic lights because that's a bigger issue altogether. And the city doesn't have, except for the flashing lights on the highway, any traffic lights. So stop signs, regulations for stop signs. So I'll start out by saying there are no specific warrants or criteria that say, if you have this, you put in a stop sign. If this occurs, you use a stop sign. So there's no black and white criteria to apply with regards to where a stop sign goes and where you use them. What we do have are guidelines that are identified in what's called the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. It's the MUTCD manual. It's a standard manual used throughout the state and actually throughout the country. And that establishes what should be considered when you're looking at stop signs. And it's a process. It's not, hey, let's try it here, let's try it there. It's a process. There's specific data that you want to review before making that determination. And I've listed a whole bunch of items here that are right out of the manual. But essentially, what you're looking at is volume of traffic. That's vehicles, bicycles, pedestrians, and what the difference are between the different legs of that intersection. What's the geometry of that intersection? So vertical curves, horizontal curves, how wide is the street? What is the street made of? Are there turning lanes? Are there curbs and gutters? Are there sidewalks? What is the street material? What's the site distance? And are there impediments to the site distance? What's the crash history? So essentially, you're evaluating the site conditions for that intersection before making a decision on whether you want to put a stop sign in or not. So the second question that came up was speed limits. And the city and the citizens do not have the authority to change speed limits on streets. The state sets the speed limits through the ORS and the OAR, which is the law, and I've stated here exactly what those say, and those are the speed limits that are assumed even if there are no speed signs. Now, you can request that speed limits are changed. There is a very detailed process for doing that. There's an intensive engineering report, and they very specifically state all the things that need to be in the report. And they even have, if you look at the manual that is provided, it's called the Speed Zone Manual. It states exactly what needs to be in there and even gives you examples. And the authority for making the decision is the state. So in other words, ODOT. So that report is sent to the state traffic engineer to evaluate, and actually you can request that they perform the study. And they will look at it and determine whether the speed limit can change. Now, there's a proviso that says if the average daily trips on a street is less than 400, which is quite low, by the way, then there is a process where the state can designate another authority as the one to set the speed limit. So there is a process if the city wanted to be able to set speed limits on streets that have very, very low traffic, that you can request that from the state. I don't know the exact process for doing that, but beyond that, it's the state that sets the speed limits. Then there are quite a few traffic control options. Oh, I might go back. There is there's several documents that ODOT put together about speed, and they're actually quite informative. And I sent all those to Shannon, I think it was today. But one of them is facts about speed zones. And one of the things that they actually have noted through all the years that they've been collecting data is that lowering posted speed doesn't necessarily reduce the speed. The question that they deem more important is how do we improve the safety? And so that's just ODOT's perspective on speed limits. So traffic control options, I've listed out a whole bunch of options here. One of them obviously is a speed bump. There's pros and cons to that, and there's different ways of doing that. There's some that are called speed tables instead of bumps because they just go slowly up and slowly down. There's also what do you call those? The little ripples that you can put in the pavement to so people when they're driving they hear that bump, 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 so they know they're coming up to an intersection. So there's various ways to work with speed bumps. Speed trailers, there are speed signs that you can put out there that are the flashing speed signs, like the one that we have on East Main coming into town. Tells you how fast you're going and what the speed limit is. Those are very effective, and I've seen actually quite a few rural communities use those, specifically when coming in off of County Road into the community. There's also enforcement. There's signage, but signage has to be used judiciously because one of the precepts in traffic control is to keep things simple. The more things that you put out at the driver, the more decisions they have to make. And actually, if you have too much signage, you can actually make it more dangerous. So signage is good, but it needs to be used judiciously. There's also markings. So that's, you know, lines in the street, essentially. There's also, you can think of railroads. When you come up to a railroad, you got a sign, but you also got a stripe in the street and you got a big X and RR. So everybody knows it's a railroad. You can do similar things with markings using color, line work, texture. Street geometry is another way to slow drivers down. So downtown, you have some bump outs where the sidewalk bumps out into the street and effectively makes the street narrower. Those tend to make drivers go more slowly because they feel squeezed and so they will slow down. You can also put chicanes in the street, which means make it curved. So there's various ways through geometry that you can control speed. It tends to be an expensive way to do it, but it's one method. Street trees are another way of slowing people down. If you have big street trees, they have the effect of slowing traffic down, specifically when they get bigger. So those are some of the methods for doing traffic control. So with that, I will answer questions if anybody has any.
Any questions, folks?
I have one, Gordon. On the 15
Yeah.
miles per hour, what constitutes, in terms of actual feet, a narrow residential roadway? Is it 20 foot?
Yeah, you know, I was looking at that and I could not find any specific definition in the OARs of what that is. So I'd have to do a little more research, but if you look at where it's lumped in with alleys, you would have to assume that it would be something similar to an alley in width.
Maybe like a 1 lane as opposed to 2 cars.
Yeah, you see those every once in a while. Some of the older streets that it may only be 12 feet wide, and it's supposed to be 2-way. That's people are going to drive slower on something like that because you feel nervous about it. But I think that's the type of thing that it's intended for, but it's not specifically defined.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Councilor Ward.
Gordon, what about shorter streets, that are almost like a half a block, so to speak? That's not mentioned here.
No, they don't. They don't differentiate between the length of the street. So I can't say anything more than that except that that's not addressed in the documentation that I come across.
Are there any other questions? Anybody else? Okay, this was basically information only and discussion. So for folks that are thinking about traffic control, check it out. We can talk more about it. I think the neighborhoods and neighbors look at it, think about maybe some things that you want to see or might want to know more about, and let's keep this conversation going and maybe do something with it. Okay, the next item.
Hey, Linda, is this for us, is this an intent for us to start the conversation for the city to maybe create a plan going forward?
There's been a lot of discussion about what the city can do and maybe what else can do. So this gives us some information on what our kind of some of the standard options are, and also some of the legal parameters that we're going to be dealing with on this.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have another comment?
I have to say, before we move on to the next agenda item, if there's no more questions for Gordon, maybe we can let him go.
Okay. Yeah, that seems reasonable. Does anybody else have any questions for Gordon? Thanks, Gordon.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye.
Good night. Alrighty. Next on the agenda is special event packet, Lad Park Fun Days.
Amy, do you want to speak to this event packet?
Sure. And I do believe we have a representative here from the Fun Days Committee, so if you have any further questions, Sarah can probably help us. So this is for the Fun Days event, the annual event. They're wanting to hold it June 26th at Lad Park. Because of the pandemic situation, they've had to modify what Fun Days looks like, but this diligent group is still wanting to go ahead and do an event for the community. It is using the park for vendors and have a prize table for kids, and they are asking as well if the pool is open that day, that the pool continue this situation of free pool swim day. So it's always been a Fun Days has this free pool day. So if that is open and available, that would be an option, something for you to consider as well. So the packet is here. If you have any questions, I can help, but Sarah is also available. So.
Does anybody have any questions or comments for either Amy or Sarah? Really? Okay. In that case, do we have a motion on this?
I'll move that city council approve the request of the Carlton Fund Days Committee for the use of Lab Park for the Carlton Fund Days event as submitted.
Is there a second?
I will second that, but Walt, can you help us with the language for putting that same condition we are applying to the pool for the county being back to a low level risk? Is that something we want to look at doing here as well?
Walt, you're muted. You're still muted.
The motion can certainly include the limitation that the event would be subject to compliance with the executive orders of the governor's office.
Just state it that way.
Okay.
Then I will second it with that addition.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. That was easy for you, Sarah.
Thank you very much.
See you next week. Okay, resolution number 2021-309, transportation growth management application authorization. Is this?
I can take it. So if you noticed on the grant update list, one of those grants was the TSP grant from TGM, which is the Transportation and Growth Management Program. This grant I tried for last year and gave a diligent effort, and we didn't get it. But they said that's pretty common to not get it on your first try. So here we go again. We really need to get our transportation plan updated. And as we talk about traffic calming and all kinds of other different options for walkability through town, all of these things are things that we can take in consideration when we go through and update our transportation plan. And having a grant to do that would be very beneficial. So I ask for a recommendation that we go ahead and go for this grant, give it a good try again. I've been in contact with ODOT, and they've given me some great key words and language to use in order to better our efforts and our attempt this time. So, and we've got a lot more time on our hand trying this time as well. So with your blessing, I'd like to continue again.
Are there any questions for Amy? Do we have a motion?
I just have one quick question. Amy, it says it's probably a 15% match.
That
So
is,
that's 20,000 something. I'm doing it in my head.
yeah, I believe you're right. It's around 21. So
21. Okay.
the application came out to just yesterday afternoon. I haven't got a chance to actually review it, but 15% they said was the most what our match would be. Last year was 12. So at this point, we're kind of in that window of it's not going to be more than 21.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Okay, now do we have a motion?
I will make a motion to authorize the grant application for resolution 2021-309.
Can I just clarify that motion is for the approval of resolution number 2021-309?
Yes, thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. It's working.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anything else? All right. Any counselors have anything, any questions, any comments? All righty, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move to adjourn the tonight's meeting.
Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Meeting is adjourned.
Bye, everybody.
Night, thank
Night.
you.